don't have energy to do anything that you want to do, but your brain starts to find enough energy to be really horrible to yourself. We're going to have a very topical conversation today. Topical for me anyway, because I am sick and I want to know how we get back to being okay after we're unwell. And I wanted to explore what being ill meant in terms of having autism and thinking about it from a chronic illness perspective as well, because honestly, I think being ill and just having like a regular virus seems to have such a high impact on me. So that's what we're going to explore today. I'm sure it's something that like people with autism must really struggle with, because I really struggle with it. So why is being ill so difficult when you have other conditions going on as well? There's a lot of information out there for, well, not a lot, but there is some information out there for like, how do I deal with my kid who's autistic when they get sick, when they get virus, when they get a cold? And that's fine. And there's some useful information in there, particularly about how autistic people respond to getting viruses. But it doesn't really say that much about what it is to be an autistic person trying to live an independent life, wanting to thrive in the workplace and having ambitions, and all those extra pressures that it adds on top of everything that's already difficult. So that's what I want to talk a little bit more about today. And I will cover this for those of us who are underemployed, unemployed, employed, and on different types of contracts, because I know so many of us are working for ourselves, are contractors, or on the kind of contracts that don't give you sick pay, for example. So again, added pressures, loads of extra things. So let's talk about it. When I get ill, of course, we get those days where you're like so ill where you can't do anything. And in some ways that's like a little bit of a respite, even though you feel horrible, but you just sleep. So those days kind of deal with themselves. And then you start to feel a little bit better, but you're not really feeling better, let's be real. And then you end up in this position where your routine has been broken and you've lost your inertia. So, and you have not done any of your special interests or anything that's kind of going to be keeping you going or making you feel good. So you end up in this position of no routine, no inertia, and no energy. So you haven't got energy to do certain executive functioning tasks. You haven't got energy to do that masking and mirroring and all the social stuff that is required when you have to get back out there into the workplace. The thing I have learned by making this video and reading a number of different sources is that autistic people can have different experiences of pain and physical discomfort, and well, we know that anyway, like we can be hypersensitive, and that is the same for things like colds and viruses. So some people are hypersensitive and it will hit you even harder, and some people don't feel pain at all. Some people on the autistic spectrum don't feel pain at all. So again, it's the same as with so many aspects of autism. You might be on like one end of the spectrum, you might be on the other end of the spectrum in terms of either feeling like really hypersensitive or feeling really like it's no big deal at all. And I gotta say, I think I'm on the hypersensitive end, which is actually strange to me, because when I was young, I always felt like I dealt with things fairly well. I can't really remember being sick that much. Maybe I just didn't get sick that much. And now when I get sick, I just look at other people and I think, how are they recovering so quickly? How are they back into certain tasks so quickly? And of course, I'm breaking a really important rule there by comparing myself to others. But that does happen. And so you have this hypersensitivity, you're not doing your special interests, so you don't feel good, you've lost your inertia, no routine, And then you're starting with this negative self-talk that starts to creep in. You don't have energy to do anything that you want to do, but your brain starts to find enough energy to be really horrible to yourself and to do this comparison and to tell yourself all the things that you're not getting done and all the ways in which this is going to impact you badly in your life because you are now ill. Not only are you ill, you seem to be more sensitive to it than other people are. This is, of course, added to the feeling that you are going to have that you are probably more frequently than other people having to perhaps take time off or take time to yourself or be more flexible in your working situations. And this is something that I struggle with a lot. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm ill again. And when I'm working with other people in particular, I find it so hard. It's like, I've got to tell people again that I'm sick. That in itself to me is just so draining. It's such a knock on self-esteem, just to continually feel like I'm going, oh, I had this flare up, then I had this shutdown, and now I've got a virus, I've got COVID again, yay. Like I just hate being this person that's seen as always ill, because I guess in my head I don't picture myself as that person. I picture myself as somebody who is vibrant, who's energetic, who goes out there and gets shit done, who's strong. He's a flipping like amateur athlete at age 41, you know, like I'm not a person who is weak and ill all the time. And yet then I find myself being this person that's weak and ill all the time. So that like really gets to my self-esteem for sure. And then the other thing is, because you've got no energy, that idea of masking and mirroring I think can feel really, really hard. So like even picking up the phone to anybody is something that feels impossible when you're not well. One thing I did read, and was about a study that was done in 2017. One thing I did read about was something called the fever effect, which actually says that some people with autism have a decrease in certain autistic traits when they get a fever. Looking more deeply, it said 17%, and I didn't see any like full statistical analysis of that, but 17% of people in the study, so it showed a decrease in stims and a better ability to communicate, more energy with people, which is kind of interesting, but is not what happens to me. So, but I thought that was interesting, and if that's one of you, then I'd love to hear about that as well. So what I've just described is like a lot of negative stuff. And I want to talk a little bit more about kind of, I guess, what's going on and then how we can help ourselves to get better. And I'm going to talk about work, but that refers to people who are employed, you know, under a permanent contract, people who are self-employed, or have their own business or consulting, people who are underemployed. So maybe you're, you might be full-time employed if you're underemployed, but you could also be, you might also be in like casual work, and then people who are unemployed as well. So when I say work, I'm including speculative work, I'm including voluntary work, I'm including training, I'm including opportunities that you are working towards, things that you are doing in your life that are kind of, that you want to do in order to help you to thrive. So it's very general when I say work. And I think for everybody, when you're ill, there's this piece of you that is, the reason I think it impacts our self-esteem is because, again, this comes back to my belief, and I know that this is not what everybody thinks, like, oh, you're not your work. But I really love work, and I really love, and again, with that general idea of what it means for me to be getting my hands into something, to be finding flow, to be creating, to be being productive. I love those things, and I do see that as an important part of me. And so when you don't get to do that, you lose something that's important to you, and that's how I feel. So certainly some of the impact of being ill is that I get really, really worried that I can't do as much and that I miss the things that I want to do. And perhaps even if we don't enjoy our work, we're still missing out on being able to do something that makes us feel valuable, which quite often I don't feel. So when you're kind of often not feeling valuable anyway, and then you get ill, that really impacts even further. So this idea of like being worried about not being effective at your job is something that I think impacts you when you're ill. So it's like, I'm sick, now I can't do these things. And if I'm always sick, which is like a narrative that I build up in my own head, I'm not going to get to advance. For me, that means like I'm not going to get to build the business I want to build. I'm not going to be able to get new clients. I'm not going to be able to kind of be known for the things I want to be known for, or become an expert in the things I want to be expert at. For other people, it might be, oh, I'm not going to be able to get that promotion or pay rise. I'm not going to get to be seen as an effective member of the team. So all of these things can be going through our mind. If you're in employment and working with others, then you might be thinking your employer or your manager won't respect you, and your colleagues won't respect you if you're ill and you're not able to get things done. You might get worried about using up sick days. And I think that certainly what I'm feeling is it does take me longer to get back into work fully after there's been something wrong. And it's important actually that you take that time if you need that time, but then it can cause this extra worry. And the other thing is, if you aren't around the team all the time and you're having these times out, even, everyone gets sick, even though sometimes people say that they've never taken a sick day. Nothing like that statement to make me feel crap about myself. But you can lose your sense of belonging in your work as well. And so you've kind of, like you said, lost your inertia, you've lost your routine with the work, and then you're losing a sense of belonging with the team too. Of course, if you're self-employed or you're in casual employment, then no work equals no money. This is such a big stress for us, isn't it? Like, of course it is. We need money now. There's a cost of living crisis. We need it even more. And when you're sick, you're not making that money. So these worries are so valid that you might have when you're ill. And of course, it's not just kind of, oh, I can't deliver work on that day. If you're not doing speculative work, then you are also, that's money from the future that you might not get to make. And the other thing that always worries me, and I know is probably kind of a fake worry and people don't necessarily think this, but I think it about myself, is like, oh, I start to question whether I'm being lazy or whether I'm overplaying what's going on. And then I think, so for all of us, when you're not able to get up and add that value, you do lose some self-esteem. And it takes a lot of mental effort to stay stronger and to try not to let it impact your self-esteem. Whilst all of those things I've just said might be true, and you're like, what are you doing? You're just saying all these terrible things, shut up. But I'm definitely a firm believer that we have to address what's going on in order to make it better, in order to feel better about where we're at. And the thing is this, whilst all of those things might be true about what's going on when you're sick, you are not going to get better by sitting there and worrying about those things. When you're sick, and you want to be back out there and you're feeling all these things, I want you to just completely shift that and start to think about what that says about what's important to you. And what that says about what's important to you is that you care about somebody who is thriving out there in the world. You care about doing your passions. You care about showing up in your work. You care about making money. So your goal when you're sick is to get better so that you can go back and to do those things. And if we're worrying, if we're stressed, that's going to make it take longer before we are well again. I want you to keep going back and focusing on that goal. Like, if you find yourself getting really despondent, and honestly, being sick can lead me into bouts of depression, and of course, and we know how hard that is to get out of. But the more we can come back into our mind and not let some of those really unhelpful neural pathways form, which is then harder to unform, the more we can challenge those things, the easier it will be to get back to being yourself and not have to worry so much about having a mental impact as well as a physical impact. So how do we get back? How do we find that goal of getting back to thriving, of getting back to yourself, the one who has these passions, who wants to work, who wants to make an impact in the world in a positive way? So the first thing I want you to do is treat each situation separately. If you're sick, if you're like me right now, then you're sick with that virus. Your one job is to get better from that virus right here, right now. And I want you to focus on that one job. It can't start bringing into it, yeah, but I just had a flare up a couple of weeks ago, or I just had a meltdown, or I just had to take half a day off because I had, like, my brain just went completely into shutdown and I couldn't work. We've got to stop with all of this, like, adding up every single thing, because it just makes you worse. So your job, get well from the thing you are ill from right now. Full stop. Focus on the things that are going to help you to do that. Stop being hard on yourself, and that's related to what we just said, that negative self-talk. You have to just say to yourself, what is it I need right now? What do I need to be comfortable? What do I need to get well? You need to be okay with it taking longer than you think it's going to take to get back. And again, I know this is tough, but often it is going to take you a little bit longer to get back to your full health than it might do for people who don't have, like, this extra sensitivity. And especially if you are starting to have mental health challenges alongside the physical health, which may well happen, then you really got to be okay with, this is going to take as long as it's going to take. It's just going to have to take as long as it's going to take. And honestly, you might get back sooner if you can get into that mindset. Don't compare to other people as well. You just need to, other people deal with their sickness, you deal with your sickness. That's just the way it is. When you are starting to feel a little bit better, start with the low energy tasks. So don't immediately be like, I really need to speak to this person, when actually speaking to people is probably one of the things that is hardest for you. It might be one of the things that is hardest for you. It's definitely one of the things that's hardest for me. So do the things that are easy. And, like, in my case, that's writing, that's doing social media. Don't do those really difficult things for you. For me, that's like anything with interaction with people. It's emails, text messages, it's obviously, like, talking to people or having meetings. Try and keep them to the minimum, especially those people who you know are going to drain your energy. Now, I do struggle with this a little bit because for example, social media is something that I like to do. I find it easy. Face on camera, not so much when you're ill, but, you know, writing things and putting things out there. And I know there's people who are like, how can this person do social media but they can't send a text message back to me? Because social media feels a lot safer to me. Because social media is a lot easier to me, because when I'm doing social media, I don't have to think about you as an individual. I can just think about me and, like, the messages I want to get out there, and think about people more broadly, obviously, but not as, like, one individual, and how do I interact with that person and know that they're going to come back to me, and then that will be an ongoing conversation. So it's much, much harder to send a text message than it is to do a social media post. And I'm bored of people saying that it's not. I mean, it won't be for everybody, but I don't like it when people are like, oh, that person can post, wow, they must be okay. That's not the case for me. Related, when you get back to things, do the things that are going to bring you joy. Again, that might be social media, going for a walk if you're feeling well enough doing that, or doing, like, gentle exercise. Yeah, I mean, everyone has their own things that they enjoy doing. So doing your special interest, or something to do with your special interest. Do go back to those things. Don't neglect them because you've only got so much energy. Make sure that you're using your energy proportionally for, like, the things you feel you have to do and the things that you feel like are going to bring you joy, because that's going to get you back. Pamper yourself where you can. And just continue to make yourself comfortable. Something I want you to remember is that when you are productive, you can be 140% more productive than neurotypical people, which means it might take you a couple of days, like a couple of days longer to get back into work from other people compared to other people. But that means that it's only going to take you a week to make up those couple of days once you're fully back to your very productive self, once you're in flow. If your self-esteem is feeling really, really low, especially related to work, I want you to keep coming back to your strengths. Like, write a strengths list. Write a list of the things that you know you do best and the things that you find joy in. And just remember those things. And remember that even if you can't do them right now, these are the things that you offer to the world. And then I think one of the most challenging things is re-establishing routine. One thing I like to do, what I've been trying to do, is when I'm sick, which is like, and I think probably it is like one of the hardest things, is not having a routine and then not knowing, like, am I okay to do this? Am I not okay to do this? And then you try to get back to your normal routine, but it doesn't work because you're still sick. And so I established 3 routines. You've got your very sick routine, and that includes, like, okay, obviously those days that when you just sleep, those days when you know when you're really still not feeling good. Those are your Netflix days. Those are the days when I watch an entire season of Vanderpump Rules in a day. Which, I don't know what that does to my mental health, but honestly is better than what I could say to myself. Just makes me more ambitious to go back and live in LA again like I did for a little while before. So you have that, like, super sick one, stay in bed, watch Netflix, just mong as much as you can. Then you've got your regular routine, which you're trying to get back to. But create an in-between routine, a routine that is a kind of starting to feel okay routine. And you could do this when you're not sick, so that when you do get sick, you're like, oh, I've already got a routine which involves the things that I know are going to make me feel a little bit better. So for me, that would be things like gentle exercise, getting outside, that kind of thing. Include the things that you feel like you want to do in order to kind of maybe get back into that working routine. So it might be some communication with work. It might be that there are some, like, whole things you can do, like, the things that are the lower energy. Then there's the things that you really get joy from, so trying to get those things back in. I mean, I'm obviously not going back to gymnastics right at this moment, but kind of find things that you do find joy in. Like I said, it might be like just getting outside and reading a book. We're lucky to have some sunshine here right now. And make sure you've got kind of less active, in this middle routine, make sure you've got less active hours than you would normally have, more rest hours than you'd normally have, longer rest in between each thing. In fact, your rest sessions might be longer than your active sessions, and just kind of gently get yourself going again. But I know, like, routine is such a crutch, and it really can make a difference between feeling, when we don't have routine, that's when those negative thoughts come in. So having a routine can be very, very helpful. And then just a quick piece, if you're working with other people, there's a kind of checklist of things for you to do. So I want you to communicate minimally so that people know what's going on, and so you don't have to worry about them knowing what's going on or second guessing. Just be very clear about where you're at. But if you can't, or if you don't for a bit, then don't feel guilty. I had something the other day where a client had emailed at like 6 p.m. on Monday nights when I was in the middle of being ill, but I knew that there was some slots that I had offered to them that were coming up soon, and they hadn't got back to me. So I checked in late on Monday, but not as late as 6, it was like 5 or something on Monday, to see if they'd taken up this Tuesday slot. And I didn't have anything, but they'd actually emailed me at 6. On the next day, the Tuesday, I didn't show up for a client session because I was ill, and because they didn't email me back until 6 o'clock to take up this just one slot, and I'd offered them 4 or 5 slots. So obviously, like, there was a whole bunch of stuff there about how we communicate and what the boundaries are with work. But anyway, and what's acceptable from clients, that kind of thing. But in that case, I just had to go back to them and say, look, I'm really sorry I was sick. I can't feel guilty about it. I just need to jump up and rearrange and do what I can do when I can do it. If you're in employment, make sure you're really clear about about your sick policies and sick pay. If you are in employment, you probably are getting sick pay if you're just off with a virus, for example. But that might be something you're worried about. So just be clear about what they are and who you need to message, that kind of thing, just so you don't fall into any traps. Make sure you are fully better before getting back into work. And that's because the impact of not being fully better can be really big. I mean, if you go back and your energy is still low, you're going to struggle with a lot of things. The executive functioning is going to feel a lot harder. The interactions with people is going to feel a lot harder, and that might increase anxiety, increase the likelihood of shutdowns and meltdowns. It can increase the likelihood of something post-viral. And for anyone with an autoimmune condition like me, then post-viral stuff is horrible, and it can then cause another flare-up. So going back too soon is like a big no-no. You've really got to try and get better before you get back into those higher energy aspects of your work. There are a lot of things you can do before you get ill, just when in your normal life. Make sure you have a conversation or write down the challenges that you're likely to face when you get ill. And so you can have a plan with your employer or your colleagues about what happens when you get ill. Then you can also get a sign off on some kind of coming back routine, which does include this in-between phase, and you can communicate with your employer that these are the tasks that make me feel less stressed, that are lower energy. I'll be able to do this when I come back, but I might not be able to do other things when I come back. Bigger picture, having employers that have flexibility or having a role that has flexibility built in can be very, very helpful. And most places now know that this is best practice, and so you can find flexible working if possible. So that's definitely something to look out for. And if disclosing feels right to you, be clear with your employer about your needs. I really want, just coming back to what I said about doing for yourself, about highlighting the strengths. Really highlight the strengths that you bring into this world when you are well, and make that part of your goal. Your goal is to get back out there so you can let your strengths shine for your employer and for yourself. I'd really like to know how all of this lands with you, if it's helpful, if it resonates. Do you feel the same thing? Am I out here on my own feeling so terrible every time I get a bit ill? And how do these strategies work for you in terms of getting back into the workplace? If you're sick right now, I hope you feel better soon. I hope I feel better soon. I am beginning to feel quite a lot better. But yeah, let me know how it goes. Don't forget to like and subscribe so more people can find this content. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.